Welcome to episode 187 of Girl Take the Lead, where each week we explore womanhood and leadership. And I'm your host, Yo Canny. Lida Citroën Boomer joins us to talk about her book, The New Rules of Influence: How to Authentically Build Trust, Drive Change, and Make an Impact. This month, we've been covering fearless leadership, and Lida talked with us about topics related to being influential, an important element of being fearless. Lida is a keynote speaker, author, and executive coach empowering global executives, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders to manage how they're perceived and drive them more towards ideal opportunities. She has helped thousands of individuals gain a fresh perspective on crafting a personal narrative that tells the right story to the right people about who they are. Her personal mission isn't just about perception, it's about profound transformation, guiding others to leave an indelible mark on the tapestry of human achievement. These are the topics we covered in the episode. 1, we matter. 2, executive presence versus influence. 3, the 4 rule groupings she put together based on why, who, how, and where. 4, when our values can become misaligned. And 5, brand and influence. Please enjoy the listen, and here you go. So welcome, Lida, to Girl Take the Lead. Love having you here. Thanks for being here.
Thank
And
you.
welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to have this conversation.
Yeah. Well, I think our listeners are going to be happy to hear us talk a little bit about marketing and other things too. At least I know I will be. So this is a great conversation. So thank you for coming. Let's start, if you would, to just sort of tell our listeners a little bit about your background. Yeah.
Sure. So I spent 20 years in corporate marketing, brand development, business development, all of that. Did everything that was expected of me, brought home a lot of results. And in 2008, as the economy in our country was falling apart, decided to become an entrepreneur. Had never wanted to have my own business, had never occurred to me. And I didn't want to do what I had done before. And this concept of personal branding was not known, but I knew how to stand up and position a company, a product, or a service. And I now wanted to do it for people. So because of the state of the economy and what was happening with everybody losing their jobs and, trying to keep their jobs, personal branding was the right opportunity and offer at the right time. And I started a personal branding firm. And 16 years later, I work in over 30 countries, individuals at all different layers of the organization. And I'm that person who wakes up every morning excited to do what I do.
That's so great. You have to tell them about your book. And I think it is just going to be so terrific. I know it's launching soon, so you might want to tell them a little bit about that. And yeah, let's hear about the book.
I've written 7 books, and they always say if you ask a mother which one is their favorite child, you're never supposed to say there is a favorite. And if my kids are listening, of course, it's not a favorite. But this one is a special place in my heart because I've written business books. Even though 3 of my books have been geared towards a military audience, which is a community I'm deeply passionate about serving, they've been business books, right? They've the formulas, the how-tos. This is the prescription. These are the case studies, and this book is a little more like a love letter. And I know that sounds really weird to say, but I feel like there are so many women and people from underrepresented groups and marginalized communities who have felt what I felt and needed something like this. And this is my gift to that community. It's a book of power. It's a book of finding our voice, being confident and clear in who we are, and then using that to make the world a better place. So that's why it sounds corny, but I kind of describe it a little bit like a love letter. I poured my heart into this book.
You did. And so many of your examples, oh my gosh, they're so heartfelt and, we can relate to them. I know I related to several of your stories, and we'll get into that a little bit, but I'll have in the show notes for our listeners, like where they can get it. And, because I know that you are going to be launching towards the end of the month. So this is nice. So tell them a little bit about it. Um, I got to read the dedication because the
Oh,
dedication, I don't know, just grabbed me. It's for all of us who want to know that by the end of this crazy and wonderful journey called life, we mattered, we made a difference, and we left the world a better place.
I love that too. And it's funny how that came about because I sometimes in my books I've included a dedication if there's a particular person that I want to say, thank you to. And my publisher kept saying, do you have a dedication? And I said, well, I didn't include it in the manuscript, so I think we're good. And it was weird because usually they would just be good with that and put the format of the book together, but they kept coming back saying, are you sure there's no dedication? I thought, okay, something's telling me I need to say something. And I just pulled that together and sent it over. And they're like, this is perfect. So I
It,
feel like it came after the book was done. And that really speaks to, I think, why I wrote it is I think
yeah,
all of us want to know that we matter, that we're here for a reason. And that reason is so perfect and so amazing. And it's our opportunity to lean into that and do something good, do something positive with it.
yeah. And your voice comes through so clear. And I guess all of us, right? We have our journeys and your previous books and your passion for the military and support of those people in service. I mean, it just all fits that this would be the next thing for you.
And if you had told me that a year ago, well, actually a year and a half ago, I would have no idea what you're talking about. I thought I was writing a book for women. And my publisher said, yeah, there's a lot of books for women. I went, okay. So then they really said, what is it that the world needs now? And I thought back to my own experience of all those 20 years in corporate, right? Trying to play by the rules, whatever those were. They weren't written anywhere. Trying to conform and assimilate and be what everybody around me was, knowing that that didn't feel genuine, but not knowing what it meant to be me. And looking at these models that were held out of this is what an executive looks like. This is what it takes to climb the corporate ladder and shatter the glass ceiling and all these messages, which really didn't have a playbook attached to them. And that's when I decided maybe this is the book the world needs now is that if we
Yeah.
don't have to look like someone else, we don't have to sound like someone else. We can be the best version of ourselves and do it in the right place in the right way. And we can make a real difference.
Well, I love you make a distinction between executive presence
Mhm.
and influence. And your whole theme about influence is just so terrific. And because I can remember being in a room with people and didn't have the highest position in the room, but if someone went to speak,
Mhm.
everyone would be silent and want to hear what that person had to say. They had the influence of the room.
Right. And people took them seriously or at least considered. And really, that's what we're trying to do with influence. It's not persuasion, it's not manipulation. It's to say that if I've got a vision, if I've got an idea, if I want to call something out, maybe point out something isn't right, that I have earned the credibility, I have the confidence and the clarity. I know my audience, I know my delivery, and I know how to present that. It can be just raising your hand in a meeting, it can be starting a movement, anything in between. And the problem I had with executive presence, and candidly, I have taught executive presence for years. The problem I've always had is it fell on three traditional pillars: gravitas, image, and communication. Well, image we kind of know means dress the part, look the part, which typically was the picture of a middle-aged white man in a black suit with a red power tie, right? That was the image. The communication was scripted and eloquent and polished and thespian like, right? But gravitas was the one that tripped everybody up. because when I was doing the research for the book, there were so many studies that said it's important to have gravitas, but people can't define what it really is. And
Mhm.
then we really can't teach people how to get it. So I'm going, wait a minute, if I don't want to look a certain way, because that's not me, and scripting my messages, like that's not the world we live in. And whatever this gravitas thing is doesn't fit me, then how do I do it? How do
Mhm.
I do it? And that's where I came up with the new rules of influence. That there's a
Yeah.
whole different playbook now.
No, I love the rules. I totally love the rules. And I love the way that you organize them. You have them like in four groups:
Mhm.
why, who, how, and where.
Yeah.
You got to talk a little bit about how you came to these groupings and these rules, because like you said, the old rules didn't work anymore, and so these are awesome, I'm going to say.
Thank you. I think so too. And, it's tough because I could have come up with 50 rules, but no one's going to remember that. So the 10 was already a mouthful. And
Mhm.
then grouping them just allows us to understand how they work together. So the first category is discover your why. So you want to have influence. Why? Why do you want to have influence? Just
Mhm.
because you can doesn't mean you should or want to.
Right.
So it's starting with the first rule, which is courage. And that doesn't mean the absence of fear. It means working through fear. But the people I've studied, the people I've worked with who have been real leaders and real people of influence, they're unwavering about their commitment to see this through. They are so deeply passionate. It is non-negotiable. And their courage carries them into interactions with the naysayers and through the times when it doesn't work and all of that. So courage is really where it starts. And then is the rule about being real. And I had a lot of people ask me, well, why wouldn't you say authentic?
Yeah.
Everybody talks about being authentic. I said, well, that's kind of the problem, right? We say, oh, be authentic with me. Well, I thought I was. But if you say be real with me, or let's have a real conversation, it tends to be easier to digest. So I went
Mhm.
with the rule of being real. And then credibility is the name of the game. I mean, it's the first foundation to any type of positioning, any type of influence is to be really clear on what you stand for and who you are,
Mhm.
and then walk the talk.
Yeah.
Putting your actions consistent with your values, and all of those baked together creates your why and helps you understand, okay, now I have clarity. Now let's build some confidence. And
Yeah.
so the second one is finding your who. And that's been an interesting one given what we went through as a world in 2020 and 2021. A lot of our who's changed. It wasn't just our direct reports and our teams, it was global communities. And all of a sudden, we were wanting to represent or stand up or advocate for groups that we didn't come from or we didn't look like. And
Mhm.
how do you do that? And a lot of people made mistakes. They tried to assume that they understood the plight or the challenges of that community because they'd read about it. So
Mhm.
that's really where the two rules of being of service and being inclusive put together a mindset that says you may not have all the answers, and that's okay. Be
Mhm.
really good at asking questions and then listen to learn, not to judge.
Mhm.
And that's that step. Moving forward, is how are you going to influence? What I love about branding and all the work that I do, and I know you've got a background in this as well, is it's not about perfection because we can't be perfect, but we absolutely have to be consistent. The same person online as in person as what somebody tells me, that consistency is when I start to trust you, right? When you
Yeah.
speak in a meeting and in the past you've offered good ideas, that consistency starts to create, some muscle memory. Agility is powerful because it's how we navigated 2020. It's what we see leaders do today when markets shift
Mhm.
or world shift, geopolitical shifts, and all of a sudden things look different, and we got to go, okay, am I going to be rigid? And this is how we've always done it. Or am I going to flex and adapt and learn and listen? And then the last one in that category is the power of storytelling.
Mm.
And you're a master at this, right? You use story to share all of these messages with your listeners, and people remember stories.
Yeah.
Whatever country, whatever culture I'm working in, if I tell a story and it's culturally relevant, because it
Hmm.
can't just be an American story, people get it. People take it and they realize it. And then
Yeah.
we wrap it all up with two rules around visibility and brand. If I don't see you, I can't be influenced by you.
Yeah.
And you have to know who you are and how you want the world to see you and receive you. And in a nutshell, those are the rules.
Yeah. Well, I think you also, and I think it's rule 3, where you talk about actions and values
Mhm.
and having alignment around those. You brought up this wonderful story about how you had to ease someone out of the organization. And I know I went to the place with my experience too, where I went, oh, yeah, I remember, this PR event, and um, I knew there was cheating going on. And it was hard, like you do have these values. And I was leaving the organization anyway, so I didn't have to stick around for very much longer, like maybe a day or two after I found all that out. But it is hard on us when those values don't match.
It pulls at a part of our heart and our gut and our head that sometimes we don't even realize until years later. And it's not to say that if you haven't done the values work first, you don't feel that discontent. I knew, and that was a really painful story to share. And I even discussed with my husband, like, do you really think I should go there? And he's like, well, you're kind of asking your reader to get real. You kind of have to get real. But it wasn't flattering. I mean, I went against everything I believed because that's what I was told and that's what I thought was expected. And I thought everybody else was doing it. And I made somebody very unhappy. And to this day, I still regret that. It was
Yeah.
not one of my finer moments, but I'll tell you, I've never done it since.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
know, and I don't know, I, and maybe it's something that just happens to us over time after being in corporate life for so long. You've seen it happen more and more, and you can
Oh, yeah.
feel it happening when it's coming for you. Several
Mhm.
times I felt, oh, okay, they're lining this up. They're
Mhm.
documenting this event. It's because you learn, especially as a leader, what the steps are within HR so that
Yeah.
you've quote followed, the correct path to dismiss somebody legally. Um,
It's
but
funny you say that because it did not even occur to me until this moment that, yes, you're absolutely right. And I absolutely saw it coming for me. Um, and I remember telling my son once, and I don't know, it's something I have to keep remembering, but there's that phrase that says, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Like, that was the beginning of my career with that organization, and they showed me who they were, and yet I was surprised later to see it happening again.
yeah.
So yeah, till this
So
moment,
we've
I can't put that
experienced this,
together.
Lita. I mean, I know putting it out there, it's almost like when you're doing a podcast and you're telling your people, like, this is really what happened. Um, there's this vulnerability that happens, but so many of us have been there. And for you to just sort of say, yeah, this happens, we all go, yeah, we know. We've been there, we've experienced it, or I've seen it happen, or whatever. So thank you for doing that and for putting that out there, because there are things in our lives that we have to live with when we're in those situations. You don't know the right thing, quote, right thing to do. You just continue along the path and you learn,
Yeah,
right? Like you said, never going to do that again. And I said to myself, well, I'm never going to do that one again, believe me. But it's part of our journey, right?
it is, and it gets us here. And if we don't have those experiences, who's to say we'd end up in the same place?
Hmm.
So I don't regret the experiences that I've had. I wish sometimes I had made different choices, but I didn't know then what I know now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Is there one group or rule that stood out for you? Because I kind of mentioned
Uh,
rule 3, because I love that and that group, but what about you?
You know,
Or is it
oh,
asking you to choose a favorite child?
I know exactly right. And I should say the last group because that has branding in it, which a lot of people have asked me. So now that I'm talking about influence, does that mean I'm moving away from branding? And I reconciled that because it's a really good question.
Yeah.
I don't think we build a brand for a company or for a person to get to that's not the end state, right? You don't have a brand, put it on a shelf and go, done. You build a brand to have influence, to be able to walk into a room and know why you're there and have people respect you and take you seriously and to have the opportunities that you want. So I love that one, but probably fundamentally, I love the first one because
Mm.
it's why, and everything boils down to why, and
Yeah.
we are so perfectly designed for everything that we're doing. Being conscious of that and leaning into that and saying, how cool is it? Like that I'm here, that you're here, that we're having this conversation, that your listeners are hearing this message now, and they may go do something really good with it.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
a really cool thing.
I love, well, the heart of every marketer and their skill is differentiation. And the fact that you bring that up in the why, that you understand what makes you you and why you're doing something. What's your point of difference in terms of why you're doing it? I loved all of the marketing lingo in the book. I was
I
just
know.
like,
I
this is so good to
can't
hear.
lose it.
We've had, well, personal branding is how I got into doing podcasting because I didn't know very much about it. And I decided to take a class with Kathy Heller and learn about podcasting because
Hmm.
someone said to me, that's a really good example of personal branding. You would learn a lot. And I thought, okay, I'll go. And I had no idea that I would be a podcaster. I can't even tell you, I had barely listened to any podcasts before I took the class. And then I come out of it and I go, you know what? I'm going to do this. This is just really great. And it has been really an experience of personal branding and influence,
Mhm.
that's challenging. It's not, like pick up the microphone and start talking.
Oh, and you're good at it. So there are a lot of people who do just pick up the microphone and start talking, but to be good at it, to have it be organized and so that your listeners getting something of value as well as it being entertaining, that's not easy. I
Right.
applaud you for that.
Well, I like when we give them things to think about. And you have certainly helped us understand. I mean, just the distinction there between executive presence and influence. I think that's very generational in the perspective of, especially for our Gen Z and millennial listeners and viewers, that they're all about influence.
Mhm.
They're almost got the master class in it with all the social media that they go through, don't you think?
Well, because influence gives them opportunity. It gives them lifestyle, it gives them choice, it gives them freedom, it gives them dependence, whatever it is that they're seeking. And yeah, I mean, one of the examples I use in the book of influence is Greta Thunberg.
Mm,
Age 15, sits down in front of Swedish parliament and delivers a message about, climate change, which captivated the world. She didn't look the part, she didn't sound the part, but her passion, her realness, her inclusivity, and how she brought different voices together to be part of that conversation with her and what she's done with it in terms of service.
yeah.
I mean, that's 15-year-old. And we see that in organizations now where you might have a CEO who carries less influence over decision making and visibility and advancement than somebody who's new to the company or someone who sits in the back.
Hmm.
But to your point, when that person speaks, everybody listens, not the CEO all the time. So it doesn't
Yeah.
come with rank and authority and job title, which is what I've been taught. I don't know about you, but I was always taught when you get there, then people will listen.
Yeah.
I was like, well, nobody defined there. I
Well,
just
and
knew I wasn't there.
I think what also came with that was you had to be driven to keep excelling and moving to the next thing to get more quote power and authority so that your executive presence increased.
Mhm.
And because organizations have gotten a lot flatter, less hierarchical, there aren't that many spots.
Right.
So you what is it that you want? What is that why for you? Is it about influence? Is it about knowing your field? What is it that you want out of what you're doing? Because the old paradigm does not work anymore.
It really doesn't. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing. And I say, in the book straight up, if somebody is reading this book because you're looking to accumulate more power, more wealth, more status, it's probably not the book for you.
Mhm.
There are so many get rich quick books out there that I'm sure would be better served, because I'm going to make the reader uncomfortable with some of the questions to get to the essence of why this matters
Yeah.
and what you want to do with this. And are you really willing to have those hard conversations and listen so that you can better serve and advocate for the people that you want to serve? We can all make a difference, but it doesn't all have to be in the same way.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautifully said. I
Thank you.
love that you said that. Well, I definitely think every business school should have a copy of your book for
Okay,
every
let's make
student.
that happen. I'm fine with that.
For every student, because I think you've done an excellent job of helping us see how to navigate so differently. And it's so important. And thank you for your fearlessness in doing this and leading us in this way. Because it's really, I know it wasn't, there's so much of you in this book, as you said, um, and you just got it out there. So thank you. Thank you for doing that.
It's funny. My older son read the book and he said, "I know you said this book was really personal and you shared all these things." He goes, "I didn't learn anything new." And I said, "Okay, so that means you've listened when I've told you all that stuff in real time." And we had a very interesting conversation. But yeah, I feel like I had to. I still am not a fan of transparency, so I didn't go that far. But I feel like I had to share what I had to share so that the reader knows that they're not the only one,
Yeah, so
who's
good.
going through this and wondering and feeling and curious about the same things, because I was too. We
Yeah.
all were.
So is there anything else you'd like for us to cover? We want them to go out and get the books.
Definitely get the books. And it's the start of a conversation. One thing we're hoping is that people will read the book maybe with someone and have conversations together, small groups within companies, or I don't know that it's a book club type book, but find a friend and read it together and
Oh,
then
that's
sort
a
of
good idea.
bounce ideas off of each other, because that's the sense of community I would love to see come out of this.
Oh, that's
The
such a
world
good
is a
idea.
very small place. So,
I remember putting a book club together for when Sheryl Sandberg did Lean In,
mm,
and got
mhm.
a bunch of, I don't know, there must have been 8 of us or so reading it together. It's such a wonderful experience. So, yes, listeners, go and do that. That's so cool.
Yes, and then let me know how it goes.
Me too. I want to hear. Yeah. So, the last question I always ask our guests: what advice would you give your 20 something self today?
Oh, and I'm grateful you said 20 and not other ages, because that does make it a little easier. I was in college, and um, I wish someone had had conversations with me at that age, like I have conversations with the reader. I was pre-law. I was supposed to go to law school. That was the path I was on. Everything was designed for that. I didn't want to be a lawyer, but I didn't
Mm,
know enough to say time out. Like, let me take a beat and figure out what I want to be. I didn't have really good role models. So I would love for that 20-year-old version of myself to just know that you're not going to make mistakes, because everything's going to get you where you're supposed to end up a little later in life, but you'll get there. And the world's going to be a better place because you're in it.
yeah,
And well, let's give that message to young people, because wouldn't that be a confidence boost no matter where you are, to hear that?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Such good advice. I would say give everybody your book.
Yeah.
20
All
right
right.
now.
I have put you on the payroll. Yeah, it is definitely a book for young people. I thought it was going to skew very young. And then several business leaders that I gave it to said, "Oh gosh, no, I think to your point, business schools and corporate folks need to read this, because you're going to pick something up. You're going to get one message that says, I could probably do a little bit more of that thing. Maybe I haven't been thinking about that part."
Yeah.
So there's something for everyone. I didn't write this to be a hard business book.
No.
There's enough of those out there and they
Yeah.
all have a place in the world. This is an easy read and it's a conversation with a friend who cares about you.
There you go. Oh, love it. Thanks
Hey,
for joining us, Lida, today. Appreciate you
thank
being
you.
here.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening today. And for this episode with Lida, I was reminded of one of the cards you'll find on our website, girltaketheleadpod.com/shop. And it's called Snarky Cat. And it reads at the bottom, trust your gut. You know what to do. And I hope you'll check it out. Snarky Cat is one of my favorite little pieces that I put into my cards. If you like this episode, please leave a comment wherever you listen to your podcasts. Tell a friend about us or join our public Facebook group, Girl Take the Lead. We also have a YouTube channel where your subscription would be appreciated. Once you're on YouTube, search at Girl Take the Lead. And you can also find us on YouTube Music and you can see a video of this episode. Here are 3 takeaways. 1, executive presence is about gravitas, but that can't be well defined, image, which is about how to dress the part, and communication. And that's usually very scripted. And that doesn't necessarily lead to influence, which isn't about manipulation or persuasion. This is why we need new rules. 2, Lida divided the 10 rules into 4 groups. Courage is our why, and it's about being real. Credibility means being clear what we stand for. Who is now global and includes rules of being of service and inclusive. How is not about perfection, but being consistent about what builds trust. And where is about visibility. And 3, misalignment of our values can be part of the journey and gets us to where we are now. We've all experienced this and we learn from them. Our next episode will be a soundbite about the women athletes of the 2024 Olympics. I know, I just couldn't resist. My hope is that you'll be as inspired as I was by the women who are truly fearless. Talk to you soon. Bye.